Hello and welcome back to another chess game analysis video. Today I'm going to show you a game that I played in the Swiss League against a guy named Frederick. I played this game last week. I prepared some Caro Kann for this match, even though I didn't really know who I was playing against, but I just thought e5, e4 was very common opening, and I never really felt comfortable with Sicilian or French or Scandinavian, so I prepped some Caro Kann, and you're gonna see some very nice preparation in this video. So I went ahead c6, indicating the Caro Kann defense. He goes into the main line with d4 and d5, and now he chooses the advanced variation with e5. This is one of the most critical variations against the Caro Kann, and it requires not a lot, but it requires some free read to actually. You need to know what you're doing with black, otherwise you're just being smothered because you have less space than your opponent. So the best move in this position is with c5 to immediately attack the white center. After something like a 5-minute think, he took the pawn, d takes e5, and now you play e6. With the bishop, you now want to recapture this pawn. These are some common motifs that you also know from the Queen's Gambit, accepted variation. So in this position, about 5 minutes thinking time for him, he chose to play b4, which is an inaccuracy. It's not a good move. It holds on to this c5 pawn, and sooner or later black is going to win back that pawn. So a better move would just be knight f3 and then develop bishop and then castle. This would be a better plan for white. Instead, he went ahead with b4, and I still had this in my preparation. I knew it was an inaccuracy, and I knew how to react to it. It is a5 is the best move in the position, challenging the center and the root of the pawn chain. If you take this pawn, then this is extremely weak. So now he has to kind of stabilize with c3. I take once he takes, and now you again attack the pawn chain, and this is still preparation because it's a little bit of an unnatural move, I think. It's b6. The idea is that if you take, then bishop takes with check, bishop blocks, for instance, and then queen takes here, and bishop is defended, and black has equalized the material and is standing better according to the engine because of the activity of the pieces, the open file for the rook. Black is just more comfortable. So after b6 he didn't take. He played bishop b5 check, which I also looked at before because you can simply block with the bishop. Note quickly that you can't block with the knight, otherwise c6 attacks the knight, knight moves, and c7 check, and the queen is gone. Plus 7.5 according to the engine, so you have to block the check with the bishop. But after bishop takes and knight takes, the engine already gives a quite significant advantage to black. Problem is that a lot of things are attacked. The knight pressures here, a lot of pressure. The open file for the rook already. It doesn't look too comfortable, and here he decided to give back the pawn. He rather holds on to the e pawn than the c pawn, which is a good decision. B takes c5, b takes c5, and bishop takes c5. This is all preparation, and you see now I've got a very nice passed d pawn, whereas he's stuck with this a pawn, which is isolated and on the edge of the board. So he basically has to defend that pawn with like a rook behind it or some minor pieces. There is no pawn left on the b file that could defend the a pawn. So this is a little bit of a weakness in the middle game. If it gets to an end game, this outside pass pawn is very strong. So my goal here already in this position is to win it as soon as possible. And being up a pawn, this very nice deep pawn, this should be an easy game. This is still preparation. He castled, I knew that already. And here is the first time that I had to think in the game. And I chose queen c7, which is not that great. Knight e7, bishop g5, and castles gives quite a significant advantage to black, because you can still move the queen because the knight is defended by the bishop. So activity is very nice, and this is still very weak. This is very weak. But I was out of preparation here on move 11, and I chose to develop the queen onto a seemingly natural square. It's not too bad, but it's not that great of a move either. He decided to develop bishop b2, knight e7 now, developing the knight, very natural square. The knight in this position wants to come here, or maybe here, to attack this weak, isolated pawn. Maybe it comes even here, where it has nice outposts as well. This would be a very nice outpost, I think, for the knight. So after the development, he develops his queen. We need to finally castle. And now, slowly but surely, I'm going to start pressuring this pawn. So he first develops with knight c3, and now I already realized in the game that the knight has a very nice way of entering into d7, into the d6 square, just a very nice outpost for the knight. But after a little bit of calculation, I realized the knight is very nice there, but it doesn't threaten anything. It doesn't really do too much. So I thought, okay, the queen on c7 is a little bit misplaced. It's going to get kicked, and with tempo it has to move again. A little bit nasty, but I'm still better. I bring my other rook into the game, rook fb8. Now the rooks are very nicely placed. Knight b5, as expected, and queen b6. And now, immediately going into this very nice square for the knight is not possible because queen takes b2 and you just lose a bishop. That's why my rook on b8 is a very nice piece. So he decides to push the a pawn, a4, and defend the knight that way, which is the best move according to the engine. And now I tried to double up my pawns on the a file, which is an alright plan, but first knight c6 would have been better. It's a very strong move, pressuring all sorts of things, threatening all sorts of things, and a very active piece. It's way more active than on e7. That's why the rook is already okay on a8. You don't immediately need to move it, but the knight needed improving, so knight c6 would have been better. I just tried to double up the rooks. Bishop d4. He trades off the dark square bishop, which is okay for me. The other knight comes into the game. The knights are getting a little bit tricky here, and I was a little bit worried in the game about that, but I just chose to let that happen. I was like, okay, if the knight comes into d6, I can't really protect that square anyway, so let it happen. The engine also says it's completely alright. Black is from the opening better here, even if after knight f takes d4. Now I play rook c8. I was somehow worried about the rooks coming in here, because the knight now controls the square, and I just thought the rook is better on the c file, but rook rook from b to a8, and this is completely fine according to the engine. This is a good plan to stack the rooks on the a file and pressure, maybe bringing the knight in here and pressure even more. So I decided rook c8, knight comes in here with tempo, and now you realize why the rook is not very nicely placed. On c8, now it has to move. It moves to a8, where it could have been a move ago, so I basically wasted the tempo. But the position, interestingly enough, is quite easy to play for black, and therefore I can just lose a tempo. It doesn't really matter in this position because the a pawn is still very weak. So he decided to offer a queen trade, and the thing is, you can actually queen trade, but after knight takes and rook takes, you're just up a pawn. But I just thought these knights would give white some compensation. They are very strong. So I didn't want to go into this. Instead, you could also take here with the knight. That's actually the engine's preferred move. And after queen takes b6, rook takes b6, knight from 6 to b5. And I somehow didn't calculate that move. Knight takes e5 is a move that I didn't really see that move. So I just thought I'm gonna go instead with the more straightforward alternative, because I just thought I'm gonna win a central pawn for basically no compensation. So I chose queen takes d4, taking the knight, which is also a very nice continuation. Queen takes d7, losing a knight, queen takes e5, and now I win a center pawn, and the a pawn is still weak. So This was a good maneuver, I think. Now the knight is threatened, so if you take this knight, I take this knight, I offer a queen trade, and this rook endgame is just completely winning. I bring my rook here, the a pawn is gonna fall, and with 5 against 3, this should be winning. There is still some technical problems, but I thought I would be happy with this. So he instead chose not to queen trade, not to knight trade, knight b5, bringing the knight back into the game. On b5, it's actually a nicely placed knight. So now my knight here on e7 is attacked. I move it to f5. He decides to play rook f to c1. I just quickly wanted to show you the very nice tactics that are in the position, because the position is so dominant for for black. If you decide to attack the queen here, then rook takes a4 works, and the a pawn is just falling, because if you take the queen, then this is checkmate, and if you don't take the queen, here, but you take the rook, then queen e1 is checkmate. So this would have blundered the game immediately, rook f to e1, but I just thought it was such a natural move, so I calculated it anyway. But instead, my opponent better rook f c1, and here I played h6. If the rook ever comes in here or gives check on h8, I have a very nice escape from my king. And here, I played very fast in the opening, and I spent a lot of time reaching this very nice dominating position. So I only had about 30 minutes left, and he had 50 minutes left, because he played the opening slowly and then the middle game fast. The very logical move, in my opinion, would just be offering a queen trade. That's what I calculated. But he, after thinking for 35 minutes, he came with the absolute berserk move, g4, which is a blunder, and it loses the game on the spot, basically. Because now the knight has very nice ways to enter the white position, and the knight can cause problems now. So I chose to go to d4. h4 would be equally good, would also be winning. Now he gives a check with the rook, and I just hide my king on h7, and now there are a lot of problems. So, for instance, if you do just nothing, then the problem is that, for instance, you make rook c7, trying to attack here, I don't know, you lose a piece here, because the pawn can't take, because the rook is hanging, and if you take with the queen, then the rook is hanging. So the queen is a little bit overworked here, so instead he moved rook a2, which isn't that great of a move, but the position is already lost. So my idea is, in this position, I want to come into e4 with the queen and dominate him completely together with the knight. But the problem is I can't go in here with check, so I have to force the white king to g2, and then I can come in here with check. So winning a tempo, the king moves to g1. If it actually moved to g3, there would have been a very nice checkmate in 3 moves. So if it moved to f1, queen h1 would have been checkmate. So my opponent actually fought pretty hard. I was surprised by that. He found king g1, but now knight f3 is check. If the king goes into the corner, there is this very nice knight e5 attacking the queen and giving a check, so you're gonna lose the queen. So he chose to go to f1, and I just tried. I was like, why not just snag a pawn, go back, we have the same position, but I just won a pawn. And now I chose to win the rook here with this very nice fork, queen b1 check, king g2, and now you see a very nice knight maneuver. Realize that as soon as I capture the rook, the white king is going to capture my knight. So I don't want my knight here, but I want the knight to be on the 4th rank, and you're going to see in a second why I want that. So I play knight e1 check, king f1, knight d3 check, king e2. He keeps on attacking my knight with the king. Knight f4 check, king f3, and now I have what I wanted. I have my knight on the 4th rank. So I can quickly take the rook on a2. He takes my knight, and now you realize why I wanted him on the 4th rank, because now the rook can come in here into the attack with check. That's a mate in 10 according to the engine. This is a very nice way to give another check, bring another piece into the attack. In this position, I'm up 3 pawns and an exchange, which is completely winning. And he resigned the game in this position. I quickly wanted to show you, instead of this rook takes, there was actually a very nice checkmate in the end. Queen takes f2, king e5, and now there are 3 different ways to checkmate the white king. Now you can basically choose what you like best. I didn't spot that checkmate. I somehow miscalculated something. Also in this position, instead of taking the rook, there was actually queen d3 check, king takes f4, e5 check, king takes, and queen e4 checkmate. So I was a little bit materialistic, grabbed the rook and then I grabbed the pawn, and I somehow miscalculated that there was a checkmate here in the middle of the board, which was a little bit unexpected, but I already thought he's gonna resign soon, so I didn't spend much time calculating. I didn't wanna get into time trouble. So this was a game advanced variation of the Caro Kann. I hope you got some ideas on how to treat this position with black, isolating the A pawn, for instance, attacking the pawn chain, and then quickly bringing your pieces into the game. I thought this was a very nice game. I'm kind of proud of the game, even though some of the mating patterns in the end could have been improved, but that's just perfectionism, I think. I hope you liked the game. I hope I'm gonna see you back here soon. If you wanna see live chess gameplay, you can check out my Twitch. I would also be happy about an Instagram follow, so you keep on being posted about my content. See you next. Have a nice one. Bye.